I'd be remiss having you on here and not allow you to tell at least one Randy Moss story. I mean, you're the guy who signed him. You know, it would be fun to know what the discussions were maybe between you and Denny and at the time to bring him in. But I mean, tell me about what that was like, bringing in this all world talent that really, in a lot of ways, put the Vikings back into preeminence in the league at that time.
Yeah, certainly going into that 98 draft, we were thinking defense. We thought our offense was in great shape. We had Chris Carter and Jake Reed at wide receiver. Both have been 1,000-yard plus receivers many years. And we had Robert Smith in the backfield. We had a great offensive line. Brad Johnson was a quality quarterback. Randall Cunningham, an excellent backup. So we were thinking defense to improve our team. We had won a playoff game against the Giants in kind of a crazy manner with an onside kick the year before. And nobody was picking us to be the kind of team we would be. But as we go into that draft, and we had Randy rated as a top 5 player, clearly. And then as the draft unfolded with some of the character questions that he had faced going back to high school with a fight that had racial overtones and allegedly failing a couple of drug tests. And so all of a sudden he's dropping in the draft. And we thought for sure Dallas would take him at 8. They passed on him and he started falling. The Titans, my next team a year later, took Kevin Dyson at 16. And we thought, oh, wow, this could actually happen, that he could make it to us at 21.
Wow.
And so at that point, Denny and I talked with Chris Carter and said, if we draft this guy, will you help mentor him? And Chris said, yeah, absolutely, because we all know what kind of player he is. And so as it turned out, he fell to us. It was a very difficult negotiation because his agents were saying, well, Randy should be paid like a top 5 player. Well, no, he is what he is. He's the 21st player. There's a rookie salary scale, and we can pay him what we can pay him with his slot. And furthermore, I wanted extra protection for the team, which I always had in contracts anyway, but I wanted even more protection that if he had any off-field incidents that caused him to be suspended or arrested, that he would have to give significant give back of signing bonus. I said I had that in every contract, but I wanted it even more so in Randy's contract to send the message. And so we finally got the deal done. He signed the deal, agreed to the clause, looked up at me when he signed the contract, and he said, Mr. Diamond, you're never going to have to worry about that clause. I promise you. I said, hey, great, Randy. Happy to hear that. Well, a year later, I'm in Tennessee. I'm not worried about it. And Randy, of course, was Offensive Rookie of the Year with 17 touchdown catches, and we should have gone to the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to revisit that one. But if we had more time, I would. But the funny aftermath was when he got into the Hall of Fame, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, and I called him to congratulate him. And I had kept a good relationship with him. I'd seen him in a couple games when we had played the Vikings with the Titans and had good conversations with him over the years. And I called to congratulate him. And he said, Jeff, you remember that clause in that rookie contract about my behavior? I told you you'd never have to enforce that. And I said, Randy, I'm happy that I or the Vikings never did. And
what a memory.
Career.
I'm guessing it was the language and interaction was a little more colorful than what Jeff just described. Because I remember when he was the year that he was eligible, and I went and Randy agreed to do it. It was before a Monday night game in Kansas City where Randy was, they were on site. The pregame crew got to shadow him the entire day and talk to him during the meeting, sat in on their pregame meeting and all this stuff. And a couple of things that jumped out. I always knew Randy was an incredibly smart football player. And, he had other things that people talked about, but the man knew football. I'd sit there watching the first half with him and how he could point things out before they were going to happen. With the receiver from Washington at the time, I forget, he was a quarterback at Ohio State. And he just, to watch these guys come up to Randy, it was like kids coming up to Santa Claus. I mean, he'll kind of probably always be that way. He's that kind of player. But at some point in that day, I remember him talking. He didn't mention Jeff by name, but he's talked about this this clause. They made me sign this clause, and I so then when I started playing golf with Jeff, I think at some point that came up, and I was like, I heard him talk about that. And, so yeah, I mean that was Randy. Randy probably doesn't forget anything, but
Right, exactly.
Just there's Hall of Famers and there's Hall of Famers of Hall of Famers, and so